You are listening to the Small Town Big Talk Show, the weekly podcast for small town people with big dreams and ideas. I'm your host, Rebecca Undum, and each week we'll cover a topic meant to inspire, encourage, and empower you to live big in your small town. Although it has its challenges, nothing beats small town living, and we're committed to sharing the best of what's working in the communities we serve. So enjoy this episode, and we hope it helps you to bloom where you've been planted. My guest on today's episode is Stephanie Wilde. Stephanie owns Say Anything Jewelry, which offers personalized pieces of jewelry that either include handwriting or fingerprints of people that we love in our lives. She has a really cool origin story of how she became a jewelry maker and also then the move to a brick and mortar store in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And even what's cooler about Stephanie and her story, obviously she's a creative, she's business savvy, and she balances this all around a family. But she also, her business has given her passion around a specific topic that I think is so important. We've addressed it on the show before, but it's about suicide prevention and awareness. And she talks a lot about her work with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and how her business and the people that were coming to her as consumers or customers really paved the way for that involvement. Stephanie offers some really beautiful advice and just overall tips for how to balance all of these things that she's passionate about, and also the importance of giving back to things that we care about. Enjoy this chat with my friend Stephanie. All right. Well, Stephanie, welcome to the Small Town Big Talk Show. So happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
It's really fun when I get recommended people to join me on the show based on someone who knows the show and believes that you're doing good work. And so you and I have never met, but I'm thrilled to visit with you. You're doing some really cool things. And I think the intro has given a little bit of background, but why don't you just dive in? Tell us, where you grew up, tell us about your jewelry business, and then dive into the work of, it's specifically a foundation that you work
Correct.
with, right? Okay. So let's just start there and we'll see where we go.
Sounds good. Well, I am Stephanie Wilde. I grew up in a small town in southwest Minnesota. Stordon, Minnesota is the name of the town I grew up in.
Shout out to Stordon.
Stordon. And it's about 240 people, or at least that's what the population sign said when I was growing up there.
Yeah.
And it was just a really great town to grow up in. Loved it. And then now I live in Sioux Falls with my family, and I own Say Anything Jewelry. And so I've got a shop in Sioux Falls downtown on Phillips Avenue, which is kind of like the main street in downtown Sioux Falls. And we do custom handwriting pieces, fingerprint pieces, hand stamping, kind of a little bit of everything personalized. So we really get to know people's stories and really find out a lot about their lives and their families. And that's my most favorite part about it.
Right. So let's talk a little bit before we get into, obviously this will just keep kind of rolling, which I hope you're okay with, but yes. I'm really interested to know how you got into that. What was it about it? I mean, I think people generally, we love personalized things, right? We always do.
Yes.
Because it's specific and unique to us, and that always feels really special. So, why jewelry? How did it all kind of come about for you?
Well, I was working as a waitress, which I had been for many years, and I worked at a fine dining restaurant here in Sioux Falls and loved my job. I was home all day with my kids. Then my husband was home in the evening, and I broke my foot, and so I couldn't work. And I found this really cool jewelry online, and I couldn't figure out how they were making it. And I just loved everything about it. I loved the style. I loved that it was personalized, like you said. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to know more about it. And so I kind of had time to do the deep dive on finding out more. And this was before you could just Google a video on YouTube.
Sure.
So this was like 2009. And
you had to do real research.
Real research. And so I figured out how to make it. It was this set of stamps that you use and a steel bench block and all of this. I kind of had that figured out, but I could not find the tools to make the jewelry. And so the first set of tools that I actually purchased were from an airplane supply company.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, just totally random that is where I found it. That's the deep, deep dive that I ended up in on the internet.
With your broken foot? You're like, I got nothing else to do. I want to figure this out.
That's exactly
This is a great story, though. I love it.
Yeah. So I had the broken foot. I found the tools from the airplane supply company. And then I had the stamping part figured out. That I was actually pretty naturally gifted in. And so then I couldn't figure out how to put jewelry together. Like that was never something I wanted to do.
Right.
Or ever had an inkling that I would be doing. And so I did go to a local bead store, and there was this very nice man named Craig who helped me out. And he showed me how to close jump rings and how to add charms and wrap pearls and do all these things that you have to do when you make jewelry. So he kind of taught me my basics of jewelry making, you would say.
This is such a great story. I'm like loving it. Because there's so many things that you're touching on that we'll come back to once you kind of keep going. So keep going because it's fascinating.
So then about a year into it, so 2009 is when I had first started it. And then in 2010, I was able to quit my job. And then about a year later in 2011, I actually opened up a retail location in our first location in a smaller spot that I'm in right now. And so we just had so many people come into the house, and my kids were little, and I did not want to keep my house that clean.
Right.
So
you outgrew your home, which is fantastic. Yes. I mean, that's fantastic. That's such a great, again, you're talking about a trajectory that I think everything in business gets like glamorized. Like, oh, you have an idea, you learn how to do it, and boom, you have a storefront. No, you don't. You probably don't. And I think too, it really depends on what people want, which is a whole separate thing. But I think, like you took it slow, and you didn't leap into something like that until it was actually necessary for you, which I think is important to kind of managing the risk of these kinds of things along the way too. But
yeah, I was really lucky that I was able to kind of build this business up while I was weaning off kind of my other full-time job.
Yep. Right.
And it was really interesting because I got my start on Etsy.
Sure. Yeah.
So in the first year of my business, I shipped to every single state in the US, and then also to several countries around the world. But yet I was still relatively unknown in Sioux Falls.
Locally, right.
Yeah, I still had some people, coming to my house and hearing about me and all those things. But I really found success online very early. And then, the brick and mortar came later.
Right.
And with that, right when I was looking to expand into brick and mortar, I had met another woman through Etsy who created t-shirt necklaces and things like that. She was another local maker, and she had reached out to me about 3 weeks before I was opening the store and said, hey, if you ever need help with anything in the future, let me know. And her name is Carla Hasselbrook, and she actually is the gal that she's my right-hand gal, and she helps me with the handwriting and fingerprint pieces that we make. She is a graphic designer by trade.
Fantastic set of skills for you to partner with. That's awesome.
So I always say God brought us together. There's no other way that I feel like, she was dropped into my life on purpose for this. I always say this is the dream I never knew I had. And this is why God put me here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Stephanie, that's so cool. I feel like I hear that a lot, that it was like one connection or one relationship or whatever, one person. A lot of times they're in the form of people. They come into your life and suddenly things click into place in ways that they wouldn't have without that one person or that one connection. And that's such a beautiful story for all of us to remember. And, to never just go, that was weird. Why did that happen? And not discount it, but actually, sit up and pay attention to it. So
yeah,
the dream I never knew I had. That's awesome.
Yes. And so with her help, we started the handwriting and fingerprint pieces that we're so well known for and sought out for right now. And that has just really opened up our eyes and our business to so many new avenues and so many people that we're able to help and touch and help heal their lives.
Can you explain a little bit? You keep referring to them as handwriting and fingerprint, right? Is that that's what you've said? So who's handwriting? Like my handwriting? Is there a specific niche of people that, you know what I mean?
We do kind of a little bit for everybody. So I have a bracelet on right now, and it has my kids' handwriting and their fingerprints.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So I have that. And then I have a piece that has my husband and I's fingerprint on it. So it's anybody's handwriting that you would want. So if you want your children's or your parents, or if you've lost a loved one, we can take their actual handwriting that they've got that you find on a sheet of paper or their driver's license or bank papers or really anywhere.
Right.
And we can take that and make that into a keepsake for you.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. So you've been in your brick and mortar now for, did you say 2010 that you opened it, or 2011?
2011.
Okay. So you've been at it for a long time. give us a few things that have changed or lessons that you've learned. Because I get it. You're in the big city, and this is totally in air quotes because, size is just super relative. But Sioux Falls is certainly the biggest community in the state of North Dakota. Similar sized, I think, even to Fargo, which is our biggest city in North Dakota. But that's still, retail and brick and mortar retail is a tough thing to be in, to stay relevant, to stay competitive, all the things. It's hard. And I would love to hear if there's certain things like decisions you've made to do or to stop doing, or any just couple of quick things you could give for people that might have retail stores. Because I think there's still the heart and soul of main streets in small towns, especially,
Yeah, they really are. And we're able to serve so many people in our brick and mortar store. Obviously people come to us for like the really big gifts, the really meaningful things, but we have things that you could just walk out with we always say we can find something for anybody you're shopping for when you shop. But one thing that has really, really worked for me is when I started my brick and mortar, my kids were just starting kindergarten and they were in preschool. And so I had really weird hours because I had to go pick up my son from preschool. And so I had just kind of weird hours throughout my week. And then it evened out a little bit more after both my kids ended up in kindergarten. Yeah. Then we could kind of have a little bit better hours. But I kind of joke now that I keep, they always say bankers' hours are like easy hours, right?
Right, they do.
And so,
I was a banker in a previous life, and they always said that, yeah.
Yes. So, and in retail, the more you're open, the more money you make. That's the bottom line, is the more you're open, the more people will come through your door, will spend the money. And for me, I have built my business around my life, not the opposite way around. And so I'm open I call them like bankers retail hours, because I'm just open 10 to 5:30. I've got to close at 5:30 so I can get my kids to their activities. And then on Saturdays, I'm just there from 10 to 3. And so then I can go enjoy the rest of the weekend with my family. Right. And then we're closed Sundays and Mondays so that I have time to make everything, because we create everything that people order is handmade by myself. And so my biggest thing is make sure that your business works for your family and your family is not working around your business.
Yeah, I think it is one of the most important things. And I think that even if it's not a business, I get that with our own businesses, we have a little more flexibility maybe, right, to make those choices. But I even think when it comes to jobs, like if you have a job, these are questions that more employers should be trying to accommodate to some degree, right? Like, unless, of course, you have to physically be in a place at a very specific set of time and hours. Like, I get all of that. But everyone is striving for work-life balance. And I think sometimes it's simply a matter of asking yourself hard questions, right? About, well, what could I do to change the way that this looks? And you know what? Like, I think the most important thing, what you just said, hearing that the more you're open, the more money you make, that's got to feel like a lot of pressure at times. And at the end of the day, you just have to say, well, is money the most important thing? Obviously, you need to be able to pay your bills. And if the work doesn't compensate you enough, then that's hard. But I think it really comes down to, if you're running your own business, you have earned the right. It is your right to decide when you want to be open, and your customers will adapt as long as it's clear and it's posted and all of that. I think that's really important for small town business owners to hear.
Yes.
Because like sports reigns everything. Like school schedules reign all in our small town. It is so hard to schedule anything. And I think sometimes people are killing themselves to figure out the best time for everybody else. And it's like, just do what works for you, and everybody else will accommodate if they want to shop in your store.
That's 100% correct. And even in my first location that I was in, it was kind of off the beaten path. And so I was more of a destination. Even for that, it was hard for people sometimes to find me. They would call and they would say, I don't know where I'm going. This is what I'm by. Can you please help me find you? But to start, that's what I needed. I wasn't able to afford, right out of the gate, the primo location that I'm in right now. I had to kind of work up to that. And that also was just sort of a gift that dropped into my lap too. It was a place that I'd always driven by on Phillips Avenue, and I knew it was a smaller location than most of the other places that were there. And in fact, when I was first opening up my original location, the woman that owned that spot had a baby boutique, and she wanted me to buy her out and, take over her business. She said, this is a great fit for you because you can take over this baby boutique and you're making these gifts for moms. And so it's just natural that you would do this. And I was sort of just like, I love your location, but I don't want to have anything to do with anything else other than what I exactly want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was opening my store, a lot of my retail friends that own businesses were like, gosh, I don't know if you're going to make it with just jewelry. I don't know if that's going to be, enough for you to do this. And I just didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to do clothing. I didn't want to do other gifts. I just wanted to sell what I was passionate about.
I think that's really interesting because I honestly, until you said it, I didn't really think about that. But it's rare to find a boutique shop that is only jewelry. In fact, I'm trying to think if I even can think of another single place that I've ever been to. Because that's
right.
That's a challenge. And yet I think, again, if I feel like when I listen to you, what I feel like I'm hearing is that you really do a lot of checking in with yourself, and you're checking in against your values. You're checking in against the things that you care about. You're checking in against your passions.
Yes.
And that's so important because I think all those people that were offering you those things, they wanted to help you. Let's be clear about that. Like well-intentioned people that love you, people that want you to succeed. But at the end of the day, you are the one that's going to lay in bed at night with your own thoughts and your own feelings. And if you've taken something on just because other people, even if they wanted to help you, but it didn't feel right to you, you're the one that has to live with that and sit with that. And I think what a bold and brave decision to just say like, nope, this is all I'm doing. And however many years later, here you are, and you're still successfully doing it. I think that's really, really cool.
And I've never offered a product that I didn't believe in, that I didn't love, and that I did not want to make.
Right.
So I only offer and do what I am passionate about and what I love to do. We'll never say no to a project that we think we can complete.
Sure.
I want to be clear about that. We will absolutely stretch our limits. And we have said yes to some projects that have been really, really amazing and propelled our business forward in new ways.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, if I try something, even if I love the outcome and I don't love creating it or making it, I'm not going to offer it. I have to stay true to myself first.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I don't feel like I meet a lot of people that keep that clarity of vision and conviction in their hearts and minds. And hopefully there are people that are listening to this that maybe, because, my job is, I don't make a product, right? I'm a speaker, but I get asked to speak at things where sometimes there's that pull. And I think, am I really the best fit for this? Those are things that I've come up against. And anytime I've ever said yes, and I didn't listen to that intuition, it hasn't been a great outcome. And it's like just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Exactly. That is the answer for everybody, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there's other things that you've got to factor in.
100%.
Okay, that's, so cool. All right. And tell me about the foundation, where it came in, how it fit into what you were doing, how it came into your world, and just what the work is all about.
Sure. So back, I think it was in the early years of my business, it was when I was still working out of my home. One of my college friends reached out to me and wanted me to create a memorial piece for her. She lost her brother to suicide, and she wanted a memorial piece that she could just wear every day, a necklace with his name and that kind of thing. And of course, I was, feeling for her and, sending her my love. And I created this piece for her, and it was so great. And then a few years later, I'd made more of those kind of pieces. And she had asked me if I would help her with a walk that was going to happen in Sioux Falls called the Out of the Darkness Walk.
I've heard of this.
Yes, through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And so that was kind of my introduction to the acronym for it is AFSP. So that was my introduction to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We had the first walk in Sioux Falls, I believe it was 2011. So it was actually right after I opened up my store for the first time. So I went and I helped out with that and was able to just see how many lives were impacted. So many more lives are impacted by suicide than I think people even have an inkling of. Until you speak of your own story and your own connection, and then it just snowballs. It's so heartbreaking to hear how many people's lives are impacted by the loss of someone that they love to suicide.
Totally agree. And I think in a previous episode, we had Tiffany Holm on, and she shared her story. And I was briefly telling you about that before we hit record here. And she talked a lot about And this is just one story in a sea of stories. But I think what we talked a lot about is that the stigma still exists around this for people. And the stigma still exists around depression and mental health. And I think we're particularly bad at it in rural America, like in small towns, because there's probably a lot of things. It's cultural. It's the fact that you don't want to be labeled as like not having it together or somehow being weak, all of those things. And then, we're a farm family, and farming has been it's been a really, really, really bad year. And when you have healthcare organizations coming forward and saying, we've got a dedicated suicide hotline for farmers, like there's just a lot of it. I feel like it's becoming more and more prevalent. This is super anecdotal, not at all scientific in nature, but I do think that the more technology driven we become, the more we're going to see this, because people aren't actually connected to people.
Yeah, I agree. There's the false illusion, I guess, of being connected to someone just because you can see somebody on a computer screen or you see pictures of their life. Right. You are not really enmeshed with that person enough. Not the same as when you would go and sit down in the coffee shop and have coffee. I worked in the coffee shop growing up. And so I was there every day. I know, who's going to have toast, who's going to put cream in their coffee, all of that stuff. Yep. And never in a million years would I have known, that this guy who came in every morning and he had peanut butter toast and coffee, I did not know that later on that he would die by suicide.
You actually served a guy like every day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's just so hard. And I think the other thing that technology does is it gives a false, like you said, a kind of a false sense of connection, but it also creates a false sense of success that everybody else has that you don't have.
For sure.
So it sets up these really ridiculous standards for what you think your life has to be. And if you sit down and your life doesn't feel that good or doesn't feel that glamorous, you feel like you're somehow less than. And that leads unreachable standards combined with a lack of real connection with people that truly know you is just a recipe for depression and mental health struggles. And I wish so badly that, and I think I said the other thing too, is just stoicism. Like we're farmers, right? And that's partly our whole culture. We're stoic by nature. And so it's like, it almost is like your feelings don't matter. And I'm trying so hard, I've got 3 kids, and just to say like, no, your feelings really do matter. How you feel about things, it matters. And you can't stuff them forever.
Right.
Because they will come out in one way, shape, or form, right? And I just feel like we're not, rural America in particular, is not that good at embracing this.
And, if you're a woman and you're very emotional, then you're labeled something. You're labeled a basket case, or she's off of her rocker, whatever the thing is.
Oh, she must be off her meds. Like people say that. And that's just like not funny. There's nothing funny about it,
And I look at that and I look at what's happening. My children are 13, about to be 14 and 12. And I look at what they speak about with their friends, and they have friends who have real major anxiety issues at 12 and 13. And, they're learning from us. And so if we are anxious, they will be anxious too. If we are in touch with our emotions, they will be as well, hopefully. So I always tell my kids, you're allowed to feel your feelings. You're allowed to feel whatever you want. My son hopefully will not listen to this older in his life and be embarrassed by this, but he's really passionate about stuff and he has a really big heart. And so for him, he does get emotional. He does cry about things when he's upset and angry. It comes out as tears. When he is worried about a classmate, he had a classmate who needed glasses and could not afford glasses. And he was like up in the night, coming back to me and saying like, how are we going to get this kid glasses, Mom? Like, what can we do? Like, can we just give him some money? And, broke my heart that he is coming to me trying to figure this out as a, then 5th grader, how he can help out with this. So our children are compassionate humans. We just really have to nurture that.
Your son sounds like an amazing young man. And when I think about, like, there's boys in particular, I think are really told to stuff the stuff down, like whatever it is, because it's not manly and it's not, it's not tough. And the whole thing is like with my kids, I had the same conversation. It's about feeling your feelings, knowing that there are appropriate ways and inappropriate ways to channel those feelings at times. Like you can't hit people because you're upset, like that kind of thing, right? But crying is, for me, has never been something that I'm not going to get upset with them about.
Agreed.
It's funny because even I have some good friends, like when it comes to sports and stuff, that last thing they want is to see their kid like crying on the court or crying on the mat or crying. And I just think at some point they'll learn through that. But like, I just shaming kids for crying, it's so hard. I struggle.
It is. And my son wrestles. And so I don't care what age your wrestler is. There's a lot of crying in wrestling.
There is. Wrestling is a intense sport.
Yes. You know, you're on the mat, literally fighting physically with another human who's matched to your age, your weight, everything. Your physical ability is exactly the same as this person.
Yeah.
And it's really just about who can get the job done. And
yeah, it stresses me out, wrestling. Neither of my boys do it, and I don't know if they will, but it's funny, we're a huge sport wrestling community. Like it's a really successful program, which is wonderful, but it's a stressful event for me to like watch. Yes. I didn't ever like super get into it. So I'm kind of like, good job, boys, just stay out. It's good.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. They really do instill some incredible values when they're coached well and stuff. It's a great sport, but it's stressful.
It is stressful. I don't ever eat at my son's tournaments. I have to wait until the end. So if we don't get done till 4, that's probably the first time I'll eat that day. Yeah. But the grit, the determination, the heart, the perseverance that they learn in it is amazing. I talked to one of my clients recently. Her 4-year-old is just starting. And she was like, my husband is not from a wrestling family. He doesn't understand why they're crying. But I told him that all ends. And I said, nope, you're going to see a bunch of 12-year-olds crying if you stick around long enough.
Right.
They just work so hard.
Yeah.
And they want it so bad. And one opponent could win one week and that you could, be the opponent that wins the next week.
Right.
So there's no guarantees. It is a passionate sport. I think people who are in that sport are very passionate, as are all, sports. Basketball was really big in my hometown. Right. We were really known for that. And so that was the go-to thing every week for us was our basketball team. And those kids worked so hard.
They do. They do. And that's just all that is an opportunity for them to learn how to channel all the stuff, right? There's a lot of it comes up in sports, but it can come up in anything competitive, right? FFA and 4-H, like whatever you pour yourself into, you're connected to it. And then it brings up all these feelings, right?
Yes.
So is there now a connection between your business and the AFSP, or is this just something that's kind of evolved because of all the people that were coming to you specifically asking for these memorial pieces?
It's kind of something that's just evolved. I do have a few products that I donate part of the proceeds to the AFSP, and I give my time to them. I'm on the state board, and so we have meetings. We have our walk that I mentioned on this week. We will actually travel to the state capital of South Dakota to Pierre, and we will go advocate at the Capitol for just different things. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention actually puts together a list of what we are to our biggest asks that we want to talk to our legislators about. And so I just received the email this morning. And so our asks are going to be that there will be more training for medical professionals. And so that way, when you are in an intake situation, whether it's at acute care or the emergency room, they're asking those questions in the beginning of the appointment. Do you feel safe in your home?
Right. Right.
Are you thinking of harming yourself, et cetera, all those things? Because what they're finding is that most people who do complete suicide have seen a caregiver within the last year for sure. Yep. And most of them within the last 30 days of their lives.
Yeah. That's really that's a terrible statistic.
So to think of what a difference that nurse that's asking you that question in the emergency room or in acute care or at your primary physician's office, what difference just that one little question or a series of questions could make. Think of all the lives that we could see saved if people asked those questions and then gave honest answers.
Yeah. I'm proud to say that I think our two local clinics both use those sets of questions. Because I went in, I had strep. Well, I thought I had strep. I was really sick. And those questions were asked of me.
Yes.
And I get that there's like this awkwardness because like I'm not being seen for anything other than like clearly I'm sick, but they just say, and then they explained it beautifully. And I didn't at all think like, well, this is weird, don't ask me these questions, because I've had enough of these conversations where I just think these are the things, and they're uniquely positioned to help. They're helping professionals, right? It isn't just whatever the thing is that you came in for.
Yes.
And I had never heard that statistic before, and that's alarming. What about on the school side of things? Is there any legislation they're kind of pushing for in schools?
That's our other ask, in fact. And so our other ask is to expand the model policy that AFSP has in place, just to provide, more training for teachers and the people who are working in our schools. They are on the front lines. Mm-hmm. You think of the school counselors. My friend actually who got me involved with AFSP is a middle school counselor, and she's lost, I think, 3 students now.
In middle school?
To suicide.
In middle school?
Some of them were in high school, but one of them was a 13-year-old boy. It's just heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. I recently asked our school superintendent, so we have 500 kids around, that's our enrollment, K through 12. And we have a elementary counselor and we have a high school counselor. Our high school counselor, their role, I honestly asked him, I said, I feel like the time has come for schools for there to be funding for 2 counselors, career counseling, which when I was in high school, that's what our guidance counselor was.
Agreed.
I wasn't a child that struggled with some of the specific things we're speaking about. So I didn't seek that person out for any of this. And yet I think now more of their time is taken up, doing with, because it was good work. It's important work.
Yes,
but I just feel like they need to be split. There needs to be career counseling. And then there just needs to be the general counseling where they have almost more of a social work background. I think they are at the front lines of it. And I don't know, I just feel like that opportunity to be that connection for some of those students, it's so important. And when they're bogged down with everything on the career side of things, like how do they even manage all of that? Right.
Right.
Both important, but I just feel like it should be 2 jobs.
Absolutely. And I know, my children go to obviously a much larger school. Mm-hmm. I think there are 500 students in my kids' 1 grade at their middle school right now. And so
that's a huge class.
Yeah. And so what's happening for the middle schools and the high schools in the Sioux Falls School District, at least where my children go, they have the same counselor for all 3 years that they're in middle school. So the same counselor will follow them 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So that if they do form a relationship with that counselor, they have got that foundation building for, 3 years. And the same happens in high school. So you have one counselor that you are assigned by your last name when you get into high school as a freshman, and that's your same counselor for all 4 years. So I do think that helps out. But again, I don't even know, we're kind of in the midst of building another high school here in Sioux Falls. And so I'm not sure what that's going to do to the class numbers. Right. And because I don't have a high schooler right now, I don't know how many kids are going to be in each of their grade. But I would have to think that if at the middle school level, they've got 500 kids in their class, that at the high school level, they will have close to 1,000.
Right. Which is a ton of kids.
4 times the size of my hometown.
Right.
For 1 grade.
Right. Yeah. It's really hard to fathom. But I think, what we're really highlighting here is the fact that there are these organizations like the AFSP that are, it's not, and I don't want to say just like, so go with me on this, but it's not just the awareness things in the communities, like the walks, right? Super important work. There's also though this legislative piece of it that, lobbying and advocating and getting the federal, state governments and then potentially federal government to look at these things more seriously. Because I sometimes think it's like we fund all these things that support the symptoms of the problem. Yeah. Instead of really funneling resources more into addressing the root cause of some of these things. And it's like crazy. I think about lack of connection and how that ruins all of us. And so many problems that the federal government throws money at is due to lack of connection.
Yes.
As one root cause, potentially, right?
And we do advocate, the AFSP does advocate at the national level as well. So
Sure.
I've had a chance to go to Washington, D.C. 2 times. And so we have a conference there where we learn for a day and a half about what we're going to talk to our legislators about. And
Cool.
so we go over, we have the Secretary of Defense come to speak with us. We have had the director, like the head of the CDC, come talk to us. We have had some really, really amazing, high-powered, really connected people to the scope of the problem come speak to us before we go in and talk to our senators and our representative. And that really empowers us as volunteers. We are a volunteer-based organization. Of course, we do have some administrative people within the organization, but we are the largest, AFSP is the largest organization to working at suicide prevention in the United States. We are the largest funder of research in suicide prevention. And so, we do the walks and we get the registration money, and the money goes so that we can put programs on the ground in communities in our state, in our towns and our schools and all of that. We'll, pay for certain programs to be happening in different communities. So there's mental health first aid, there's assist training, and all those things we contribute funds for so that people can go take those for free, or we'll pay for the facilitator, or we'll pay for the facility or lunch or something.
Yep.
So that we can get these programs in our communities and that kind of thing. And our volunteers go out and give Talk Saves Lives presentations in small towns and in schools. And it's just amazing, the hope that we are able to spread, and the message of talking about it will not make it happen.
Yeah.
Talking about suicide with your students, with your family, with your spouse, with whoever it is. And I've really learned through all of this is you have to check in with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to check in with everybody. So it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. Absolutely. With your children, of course, and with your spouse. I've asked my spouse. I just feel like it's my responsibility to ask everybody around me. Because you're not going to put it in their head if you ask them.
Right.
If they're thinking about it, they're already thinking about it. They are far more likely to tell you how they're feeling if you provide a safe place and you offer up the conversation to them.
Yeah. So I think that might be a good place to kind of leave our listeners. One question I'm going to ask you, and then if you have a takeaway, kind of just a general takeaway for us, because I think the thing is, like, we spent some time talking about your business, which I always love supporting people that are doing good work, and it's handmade and it's hand loved, and like you have a real passion for the work that you do. And so, of course, in our show notes, we will link to your site, because I'm sure there are people listening that would love a memorial piece. I think that is such a beautiful thing. When I was thinking about this, I've lost all of my grandparents now. We moved back to my hometown. So I grew up here and we moved back 11 years ago. And I had my maternal grandparents, my paternal grandparents, and then a bonus set of grandparents, like the couple that lived down the road and took care of us. And we called them grandpa and grandma, and they didn't correct us. And they just became ours. Like, they let us call them that. 5 of the 6 of them were alive when I moved back here. And so I've been here, right here, for every single one of the rest of their passings. And such a gift. I mean, such a hard thing, but such a gift to be able to be right here. And I've got all these things, like my grandma, my mom's mom, she wrote in a cookbook. And some of the things that she wrote in this cookbook to me are just so precious. And the idea to be able to, have them in something that I could wear. It's beautiful work that you're doing. And you're giving them all the other business owners that permission to set their own terms, which I think is not said enough.
No, it's not.
Like, and your customer decides. Yep, your customer, obviously, they reward the choices you make by frequenting your business or not, but those choices are still yours to make.
100%. People will adapt to what you are offering them.
Absolutely.
So whether it's setting your hours, how it works best for your family, or being closed on the day that, your basketball team makes it to state. Or that kind of thing. You get to choose those things.
You do. So that's a beautiful takeaway on the business side of things. But as we kind of transitioned into this this discussion about mental health, really, I mean, it really is a discussion about mental health and how you're choosing to support it where you're at. What takeaway or bit of advice would you give to the people that are listening to this if mental health is a concern for their community? What can we individually do?
Well, I think mental health is a concern for every single community, for every single family. And so I think just having that conversation, asking the hard questions. How are you feeling about this? Do you ever feel like harming yourself? Those questions are hard questions to ask, but they are absolutely necessary. And so getting comfortable having the uncomfortable conversations, I think is great. And the other thing that is so easy to do is, with our organization, AFSP, you can go to afsp.org and there is a little button for advocacy. And if you sign up to be an advocate, I just got an email today from the AFSP. And so basically they'll draft the whole email for you, and you as an advocate will get an email and it'll say, yes, I would like to send this to my representative and my senators. And all you do is click the button, it adds your name, it pre-fills everything in, and then you hit your connection to the topic, whether you've lost a loved one to suicide, whether you're just passionate about the issues, whether you've struggled yourself. And then you can add in a personalized message to them if you would like, or you don't have to. And then you hit send, and that button goes, or that email goes straight to the representatives and the senators in your state. So AFSP is a nationwide program. We've got chapters in all states. And so getting involved in the advocacy, just sending that email, the people who work for you in Washington, because they work for us,
yes,
or they work for us at our state level, letting them know what we are passionate about. And, one thing that I did find in going to Washington, D.C. the first time, it was interesting because every single one of our representatives, senators said, well, it's the Native American population, right? That's why the rate's so high in South Dakota. That's why it's, we're ranked 9th in the nation for people dying by suicide. And yes, the Native American population, we do lose a lot of people to suicide, but it is the farmers. It is the young people. It is the housewives. It's not an other people problem. It's an everybody problem.
Well, and to that point, what if your primary driver of death by suicide is the Native American population? So what? So that means you've then identified the problem, and it still is it's still our problem.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I get it. There's cultural challenges potentially because they have the Native American population. Like sometimes they have their entire whole sets of rules that are different from. I get that there's cultural challenges with some of that, but as soon as we say, well, that's them, then like you said, it's an other people thing, and we just don't give our time and attention to it anymore,
Right.
It always feels good if we can identify somebody that doesn't feel like it's our problem, but this is totally our problem, all of us.
Right. And like you said, we've got the other helpline for specifically set up for farmers. And that is absolutely amazing that we've got that, because I think they're in their own different category. They just really are these proud men, and they are holding, and women that are holding their family's heritage in their hands.
That's exactly what it is, Stephanie. And it feels amazing when you feel like you have the strength to hold it. And it feels overwhelming when you feel like you don't. And that's the current, not just the weather conditions, but the actual markets, all of it. It's making that legacy really hard to uphold. And fear, it's so scary for them.
Yeah.
And that's just it. I mean, this isn't just like young farmers. I think people really don't understand these. There's some of these people that have been farming for years, like decades, and they're crumbling under the weight of all of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a huge concern. So the last thing that I asked, you've given us a couple of really important things to do and think about, and I want to thank you for that. And thank you for your time. It's been awesome to visit with you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
My last question that I like to ask every guest, and I prepped you with this one, and I get that, again, you're in Sioux Falls, so that's okay, because I'm pretty sure you still have connections to small towns all over South Dakota and maybe the country. What does living big in a small town look like to you, Stephanie?
It looks like being authentic.
Yeah.
Being absolutely authentic with who you are and what your values are, what you stand for. And I get that that's tough to do anywhere, but sometimes it's even more difficult to do in a small town because everybody does see you. You're under the microscope even further there. So if you're the one in the small town who likes different music, then you're the only one who likes the rap music and everybody listens to country. You're, kind of the different one in air quotes there.
Right.
But being your own true, authentic self to whatever it is that really fuels your passion and really lights you up inside is 100% what you should follow with your heart and your actions and live your life in the most authentic way you can.
I love that so much as a person who cares deeply about small towns and my own community specifically. Our community, if you think of it like a tapestry, right? If we all only like the same things, it's really bland and pretty boring to look at, right? But when people really step into who they are and they step into the things they care about, they follow their passions, they actually do the things they want to do, it creates variety and creates richness. And we learn from each other then too. And it doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to abandon your love for country music to listen to rap music, but you might learn something about that in the process, and learn something about yourself in the process. And I think you're right, being in a small town where everybody can see you and you are kind of, I've called it like a petri dish, right? Where it's like, here we all are and we're all hanging out together, but we were all created uniquely.
Yes. Yeah.
And when we can contribute our gifts and our time and our talents and our abilities and our passions, everything gets richer.
Absolutely. God gave us all a unique set of gifts and a unique set of eyes to see the world with. Right. And so I feel like it's a disservice to the world if you do not embrace your authentic self. And
agreed.
That's my biggest thing. I mean, think about where your community would be if you didn't do what you do. You're a gift to them. I just feel like everything is built on that kind of being true to yourself, being authentic. And
yeah. And I feel too, like, just because your gifts don't look exactly like everybody else's doesn't mean they're worth less. And I think they're so easy for people to say, I just don't have anything unique to contribute. And I just look at people and I'm like, you need to sit down and spend a little time then and think about it, because yes, you do.
People tell me all the time, oh, I'm not creative. They'll come in to design jewelry with me and they'll say, I'm not creative. I'm like, you are creative in a different way. And so I usually will say, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a teacher. Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah, you're like,
so creative. You're teaching little people how to read and write. And that's amazing to me. Or somebody who comes in and they say, well, I'm an accountant. You're creative in a whole other amazing way than I could be.
Right. Yeah. Everybody has something to contribute. And and we just need to be willing to kind of let it all out and let it all shine. And I think there again too, that's where connection comes from, kind of circling all the way back to the whole point. That's what it's all about. So Stephanie, thank you for the work that you're doing. I can't wait to promote and share your business, but especially the work that you're doing with the AFSP. It's really important work, and I hope it encourages some of our listeners to join that movement as well.
I hope so too. There's lots of different ways that you can become involved with the organization. You can help out physically at a walk or something in your community or in your state, or you can help out by becoming an advocate just online. We kind of joke, it's so easy, you can do it in your underwear.
Yeah, fantastic.
Sitting and sending that email, even while you're laying in bed or you're hanging out on the couch at night with your family. It's just something really easy to do and gives everybody a voice in the conversation that needs to happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Small Town Big Talk Show. If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to subscribe on Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. The more reviews we get, the easier it will be for other small town friends to find us. We encourage you to keep on living big in your small town, because the size of your life is not determined by your zip code.